All right. So full disclosure, I am talking about the book specifically. The movie is an entirely different thing that would merit its own discussion. Book only for now.
If you want to experience this particular story in a more tolerable way, just watch the movie instead.
It was actually made by people who know what they're doing with characters, storytelling, pacing, etc.
You have been forewarned.
The book, as will no doubt become apparent, has some issues.
So many. For those who were lucky enough to avoid this particular eye-melting phenomenon, let me ruin that experience for you now. The story takes place inside of the boring life of a high school white toast girl called Beller. Beller Swan. More like Beller Swanlin D's nuts.
Got he.
She is forced to move away from the only part of Arizona that doesn't get any sunlight year-round. I'm guessing the bottom of a lake or something, to the once unheard of but now incredibly popular tourist destination of Forks, Washington.
It is there that our spunky little protagonist is rained on all the time.
The story drones on a bit at this point. There's this attempted van collision that happens, and Beller happens to meet a group of mysterious weirdos.
The Cullens. Well, they call themselves the Cullens.
Oh, and the Hales.
There are 2 Hale says.
Says?
2 people named Hale. There.
Got it.
I'm pretty sure I remember Rosalie being married to the big bear guy, and that Jasper is the humanoid equivalent of that old chihuahua that bites everything.
That's why he's favorite animal.
After the attempted manslaughter, Beller has a conversation with the Edward-flavored Cullen Krita.
Honestly, their conversation brought me out of the half-asleep stupor the rest of the book had lulled me into.
Finally, something with some entertainment. She gets out of the hospital, and Edward starts warming up to her.
Well, I mean, as much as he can warm up to her. Beller's kinder stinky.
And so, since this is a high school setting, there's a school dance. However, Beller can't go because she is double booked for a Seattle engagement. Since she has to choose to go to Seattle instead, she declines literally every single boy with a pulse and some without one, hey-yo, who are tripping over themselves to ask her out.
Same. Me too, right, ladies?
Oh, that's right.
I'm alone.
While avoiding all the high school boys, Beller meets Jacob Black. Jacob is a Native American boy whose father is really into Beller's dad, Charlie Swan. In the movie they have, like, the absolute best bromance, and is basically the whole reason I even bothered watching the movies back in the day. Charlie Swan is the best character.
It's not even close.
Anyway, back to Jacob and Beller or whatever. He tells her about this old legend about the Cullens family and maybe the Hale ones, too. Is it just me who finds it weird that they have 2 unrelated people living in their house? The legend is about how they like running around biting animals for fun. Oh, and I guess vampirism or something. So, as it turns out, the pale loner girl kid exiled to the Rainlands from the desert isn't the actually vampire in the story.
Much to my immense disappointment.
It's actually the supermodel hot kids all along.
Go figure. Us normies can't have anything cool.
Whatever. Like I care or even want to be a cool vampire.
PSH.
I originally thought the vampire kids lived in Forks for 47 millennia because it's all stormy and rainy there, which meant the sun wouldn't melt them like a peep in the microwave. But apparently vampires don't work like that in the Beller Soniverse. Nah, vampires here don't bleed blood.
They bleed this syrup stuff called venom. I wonder if it's good on waffles.
Screw it, I'd try it.
Their vampire porcelain skin is, well, like porcelain.
When they get hurt it crumples like crumbling stone. Wait, these Cullens and Guest aren't vampires. They're rock golems. Okay, when they do a remake of these movies, somebody slip the thing in there somewhere.
Please, I need this.
Anyway, when these vampires drink human blood, their eyes turn red. When they drink non-human blood, their eyes turn an amber color. I wonder if they drink tree sap and get green eyes. Someone write that down. Oh, and the sun.
Turns out it doesn't make them burst into flame like a normal, sensible, God-fearing vampire that we typically know. Nah, they sparkle in it like when you put your metal keys in a sunbeam and use the reflection to blind your favorite mom going 9 to 5 down the interstate in bumper-to-bumper Chicago traffic.
Also, sometimes the vampire gets a random superpower, so there's a bit of some X-Men flair tucked away in there. Yeah, I don't think this is a vampire.
It's that running statue from Resident Evil 4 with an eyeball gas gauge.
Anyway, Bella manages to piece together that Edward is a vampire because of passing curiosity.
She legitimately takes the symptoms of his condition and basically puts it into WebMD and gets the answer right away.
Some people have all the luck.
When I do that for my aging body, it's because of all those radioactive spider bites from that school field trip.
That's ridiculous. Those things are harmless. Personally, I really don't have that much of a problem with the stone golem vampire. It's interesting and new.
Well, I mean, it was at the time, anyway.
The issue I have with them is that they are too strong. The dialogue from Head Boy Cullen is that, aside from nuclear weapons, these vampires aren't really fazed by much of anything. Which begs the question, why do they live in hiding? I think Jasper alone could easily take over the entire planet without much effort, and his mutant X-Man power is PTSD.
When humans attack, I can't imagine it being any more effective than an angry mob throwing bullets at Superman.
I might be missing something, but is there a specific reason they are hiding?
Anyway, back at the plot. Bella's friend kidnapped to the town of Port Angeles so her plot-convenient friends can go buy dresses for that dance mentioned earlier, even though she's off to Seattle for her pitch meeting or whatever it was. Why are they asking her for her input?
All she wears are hoodies. Do they have a crush on her? That would be kinda cool. So, after like 5 minutes of shopping, Bella gets bored and wanders off.
Such a mood, Gabrieller.
So, as she's minding her business thinking of cool karate moves, some guys show up and harass her, because America. During this part, Bella is analyzing her opponents in order to strategically take them all out in an epic kung fu action scene, which I imagine would also involve backflipping off of a rocket, and the nefarious boys are advancing to do nefarious boy stuff, before Bella can crush them all with her secret agent training. Edward shows up and saves the day by giving them a strongly worded warning and some hard candy. Get it? He's like, super old. Apparently, he could smell her stank from forks and came to hose her down.
Wait, that's not why he's there.
So, a little about Edward.
He has a mutant X-Man power.
He can read minds.
He read the minds of the ne'er-do-wells and, well, they wanted to do something to Bella that I can't say on YouTube because even though I'm in my 30s, I can't say certain words.
Damn 1984 in here. They wanted to rhymes with a purple fruiter.
That's right. They wanted to blueberry her. Yep. Still America.
So that begs the question. Why is Edward here reading the minds of people around Bella?
You'll run.
Run fast. Anyway, since Bella doesn't have the survival instincts to run away, wait, maybe she has to stay under cover for some reason.
I'm on to you, special agent Swollen D's nuts.
She and Edward have awkward conversation over spaghetti and Coke. To be fair, I've had that date before.
Is secondhand embarrassment a thing?
If I have it, am I feeling it for Edward or Bella? While they're talking, Edward hands Bella his order of spaghetti and Coke.
I bet he forgot his teeth in the car. So Bella gets into the car of the guy who lightly saved her from realizing her dreams of becoming the next big action movie star after learning that he can kind or sort of read minds and is older than the country she's living in.
Alone. So much for her friends, am I right? Who needs them anyway?
Full disclosure, I hope Bella was their ride and she'd just left them stranded.
Edward the elderly man puts his arthritic foot to the pedal and speed through the swamp-infested roads at like 5,000 miles an hour. Okay, so, I get that the vampires here have lightning, fast reflexes and supernatural reaction speed. Thing is, the car doesn't. It's a normal car.
Actually, no, I take that back. It's a sports car that he is driving in Washington.
The birthplace of rain.
Nar, he'd be hydroplaning more than a jet ski on a lake going that fast. Might as well drive around a waverner at that point.
So, after Beller's dropped off by the car that probably did more flips than that famous stunt in Casino Royale, she arrives to her diary and decides to tell it that she's hopelessly and permanently in love.
I mean, I like Coca-Cola and spaghetti as much as the next girl, but damn, maybe meet his parents first.
Sure, he's so old that his parents might be the crypt keeper, but they are still alive. So they have some more school look. The book's pacing is glacial.
I'm going as fast as I can here.
TBH, glacial is a little fast a word for it. Edward convinces Bella, the pale introvert nerd girl, to go out hiking with him during the one day that decade where it was sunny in Forks.
Bella agrees, despite the Black family rolling up and warning her that she's been a complete idiot.
I mentioned the sparkling bit earlier, but the nature walk is where Bella sees it for the first time. It happens in a magic forest field.
I think there was a deer and some birds and a couple rabbits.
Point is, Edward might be a Disney princess. Either that or I fell asleep and thought about Tangled again.
I should watch Tangled.
So, after Edward shows off his admittedly incredibly effective predator advantage by being a walking, talking set of sparkly jingle keys who among us doesn't like shiny things, am I right?
Edward, instead of biting her in half like a jelly donut, invites her to play baseball during a thunderstorm.
Yeah, they need to use the lightning strikes to hide the noise of them hitting the ball. Look, I covered this with the car. The bat and ball are normal. Doing anything supernatural to them would either explode the bat into a million pieces or dent it into oblivion. The things we use have stress and breaking points, you know. If you're hitting a ball with enough force to mimic thunder, the ball would explode into shrapnel and, you know, be an easy out for the catcher. None of that happens, despite my deep desire for it to.
I feel like the movie should have at least done an extended scene with exploding bats. Real crowd pleaser.
Anyway, the wind changes direction or something, and a rogue group of non-animal chewing vampires show up. The Cullens decide to pretend that Bella is a fellow vampire, which is kind of funny.
You know, she pale.
The breeze rolls over them and James the human chew picks up on her scent. He decides that vampires shouldn't keep a human for a pet and asks Edward, bro, you gonna eat that?
So, if you really think about it, that little game of baseball basically marks Bella for death.
Which, objectively, is probably the most exciting thing to happen in baseball. Anyway, James decides to eat Edward's dinner for him, and now the Cullens plus Hale folk are tasked with protecting Bella from her new antagonist.
A dude named James.
Yeah, about that it doesn't work.
James uses audio from some old video he found to convince Bella that he kidnapped her mom and leads her to this old dance studio to kill her.
Hey, I'll admit,
that's pretty clever.
Game recognized, James. So James bites Bella and drinks her up like a Capri Sun at a hot BBQ. But Edward shows up because his, sister Alice
is Alice person. She reads the unfinished manuscript on Steppe Mayor's desk and deduces the location of where Bella's corpse was supposed to be.
Problem is, James accidentally leaves some venom inside of Bella.
Yeah, I get that. I used to backsplash my Coca-Cola too. It happens.
So Edward and his Cullens plus friends smoke James.
During this vampire murder, Bella is, well, basically dying of internal bleeding because James knocked her around like a cat with a yarn ball. So the Cullen patriarch, who has been a doctor since the early Middle Ages probably, he decides that Bella will be a good learning experience for his bouncy baby boy.
Edward has to slurp out the backwash in the discarded Capri Sun without finishing the juice pouch. Yeah, Bella's a Capri Sun, still. Edward succeeds in his drinking vamp spit task, damn it. And they go to something?
Prom.
Probably prom. So, the bruised and battered Bella has her injuries explained by her clumsy ass falling down the stairs and out of a window. And I am not kidding about that.
This is the kind of red flag that's basically black.
The thing is, everyone who knows her actually believes that something like this would actually happen to her.
Ladies, if your girlfriend winds up with most of her bones broken and her man says that stairs attacked her, maybe hide some cameras in her teddy bear to make sure he's not gonna straight up murder her.
And that's Twilight. Here's my problem with it. The entire story has been written entirely around very specific scenes, basically. Every conversation that happens between Edward and Bella.
The original author all but confirmed this, but I picked up on it without know that after my first and only read through of the book. Okay, I didn't actually read this with my eyes.
I have text to speech. This novel played in my ears like a poorly tuned trumpet.
I couldn't have made it to the end on my own. I can't be trusted.
The reason I could tell right away is because the only engaging and fun parts of the story are when those two are talking to each other. Now, I am not going to come out and say that Twilight is either good or bad. There are plenty of other people who can say their opinions on this story. What I will say, though, is that this story is unfinished. Let me explain. When a fiction writer writes a novel, there are these things called drafts. A rough draft, or first draft, is the very first time a story is written down from start to finish. Oh shoot, I made that sound too fancy. It's the author vomiting all of their ideas out on paper.
It's essentially scrambled up notes with a narrative structure. How most writers write. That novel you enjoyed last week. They take that word salad they baff out and refine the whole thing by rewriting it over and over and over until it becomes the hyper-polished story structured word salad you enjoyed paying half a cup of coffee to read on your phone. I write my own rough drafts most of the time by hand.
While I'm writing down my first draft, I'm not worrying about frivolous things like story structure, character names, it being entirely in English. None of that crap.
I wanna get all my plot points in one place, sometimes in order, and that's it. Then I grab a fresh Word document. I use Scrivener most of the time, but random notes apps are not safe from me and rewrite all of that draft again from scratch. Then I take that draft and write it again.
I do this 3 times on average unless I need to redo the whole story.
The Twilight author didn't do this at all.
Twilight is this novel's first draft, and I can tell right away.
My first drafts look a lot like this book does.
Actually, no, mine are way worse.
I'm the worst fiction writer to ever write.
The difference between me and her is that I took the time to write the thing and fix my mistakes. I would never let someone read my first draft, let alone send it to be published. So how did this happen?
Well, I could speculate until the sparkly cows come home. But the truth is, I doubt I'd ever find out why.
Or even if I'm right about this. That being said, I do have an educated guess. See, I don't think anyone else has really noticed this because most of the people who talk about this book are, you know, normal about stories. They took one read of this book and went, hey, this sure is a book. They didn't exist in the way that I do, where they instinctively take every piece of media and grind it into a fine paste to figure out the ingredients inside of the processed meat of the story.
I'm not well. Send help. Pointers. There's a long list of experts who had to look at this book before it got published.
First we have the writer of it, Stephanie Meyer.
She, at that time, was not a book writer.
She had some lucid dreams about a boy and a girl having conversations and wrote those conversations down. Then she built a story around those.
I've written more with less data than that. If it works, it works.
Point is, she was just starting out.
She didn't know that she needed to write the book and polish it up. It's not like anybody outside of the sphere of novel writing talks about that.
It's fiction writing magic as far as normies are concerned. The second peoples to read Twilight are publishers. Publishers are full of editors, agents, business-type people essentially.
They may or may not be novel writers themselves. Who's to say? But they get paid the big bucks to pick the ones that make the most money. But they have to read a ton of novels very quickly to do that.
They're not going to slap this as a rough draft on the book and send it back.
They'll either take it and start publishing, or they'll throw it into the furnace probably filled with burnt ashes of my own novels. Gotta keep that fire going right.
The publishers decided that Twilight would sell. I mean, they probably provided feedback like, hey, make Edward 17 because his denture's falling out whenever. A kiss really isn't doing it for me, or put the story in Forks instead of Arizona, or take that part where Bella is a super spy out, or take out that section with exploding baseballs to spite, that VTuber complaining about it. But nobody sat down and read it with the purpose of fixing the story's pacing issues.
There was a teenage girl money trained to board.
Woo-woo.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think it's a bad idea to have a rough draft published by any means. I do think that it's an incredibly rare thing to have happened. However, I'd like to discourage anybody from submitting a barely finished novel to a publishing company and expecting them to like it.
I think that's my main advice for Twilight. Don't write Twilight. Stephanie already wrote Twilight.
Instead, write about that thing you've been having dreams about. You'll probably like it better anyway. Also, if you're writing a novel or something similar and you want to see if your rough draft is going in the right direction, read the first Twilight book. If your current manuscript draft is better than that, you're doing well. If it's worse, at least you have the luxury to rewrite it.
Stephanie is stuck with that draft of Twilight forever.
Talk about a terrible fate.